Hey, good afternoon, Christina and Mary. How are you?
Doing good. Happy it's almost the weekend.
It is almost the weekend.
And I'm also doing well over here in dark and gray New Jersey. I know it's dark and gray, but it's warm and bright in my heart.
The way you said that was just tremendous, Christina. That's awesome. Well, as you all can see, loyal listeners, I have two guests today. This is the first time I've ever done this, so we are trying something new out. It's a format I want to do more of next year. This is the first part of season 2, and I am really honored to start it with my friends Christina and Mary, who are on the podcast. And with that, we got a lot to talk about. So Christina and Mary and Christina, no order here. Love if you would each introduce yourself to the audience. Mary, where are you in the world? And just a little bit about yourselves. And then we've got a lot to talk about today. So ladies, the microphone is yours.
Cool. Well, like I said, I'm Christina Stathopoulos. A little bit about me is I am a professional certified coach in private practice. I run a coaching practice called Hear Her Roar, where I work primarily with community women leaders. And in addition to that, I'm also a podcast host. I co-host Coachtaku, where coaching and anime passions collide, with my dear friend Mary, who's on the show with us today. And other than that, a fun fact about me that I like to share with people is that I'm a beer brewer. So I beer brew at home, and I've recently been brewing kombucha as well. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. I had no idea you're a beer brewer. What's your go-to for in terms, like, what kind of beer do you like to brew in terms of the hops, or what's the style you like to do?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually really into Belgian style beers, which means it's less
Yes.
about the hops and more about adding like fun candies and sugars and getting high alcohol contents. So Belgian triples in particular are probably my favorite style these days.
Very cool. You can count on me asking you more about this, because you're now touching on a topic that I love: beer and alcohol. Thanks, Christina. Mary, how about you?
Hi, so my name is Mary, and I am a life and career coach, and I love working with people around figuring out what's next for themselves in their professional lives. And as Christina mentioned, we co-host this amazing podcast, Coachtaku. And a fun fact about me is that I've spent a lot of time this year just like tapping into my creative side, doing more painting and writing, which has been a lot of fun.
Very nice. All right. We're going to get right into it. And I want to start with your podcast because, one, I've talked to you both a little bit about this. As fellow podcasters, we could probably geek out on podcasting for the next hour. I don't think anybody in the audience wants to hear that. And you also do podcasting on something that I know almost nothing about, which is very interesting to me. So I'd love if you could give the audience a little more about the podcast, what it's about, the genesis of it, and how it's been going. And then from there, I'm going to have a whole bunch of questions about anime, since it's not something I know much about.
So I can start, and then Christina can chime in. So this idea of this podcast was born over dinner and drinks. And naturally, for both of us, we were having dinner at a Korean place. And all of a sudden, we start talking about two of our favorite things. One, of course, is coaching. And the other one, not so well known to both of us at the time, was anime. And we started thinking, oh my God, there are so many life lessons in anime, so many things that we've learned, so many things that now through a coaching lens we can apply. And it just became a really fun conversation. And I don't remember, Christina, if you remember who suggested it. I think it was either you or Paul who said, Coachtaku. And we were like, yes. And so we surrendered the idea, we let it go. And then in June, Christina goes, hey, Mary, you ready to start that podcast? I'm like, yes. Can we start tomorrow? And hence we started this amazing partnership where we've been talking about how we see anime and coaching come together.
Yeah, it's been a super fun project. And to Mary's point, I think exactly what happened was my husband was at this dinner table with us, and he actually reflected. He was like, wow, I can't actually tell what the two of you are nerdier about, coaching or anime. And we just had this moment of like, why not both?
Yeah.
And so here is Coachtaku.
Did you say to him, oh, it sounds like you're in an either or context. What would be possible from both? He'd be like, Be quiet. Please stop doing this.
No.
That's super cool. I'm curious about the name. So does the second part of the name, does that come from something in the anime world?
Yeah, so actually, a lot of anime fans and like Japanophiles, people that love Japanese culture in general, they'll know that the word otaku is the Japanese word for essentially a nerd. And so, like, even Japanese people like call anime lovers nerdy, so they call them otakus. And so we combined coach and otaku together to create Coachtaku.
I love that. I learned something new. I would have no idea without looking that up. Well, congratulations. That's really cool. So how long has the show been out now for?
So we officially released a teaser this past July of 2020, and we launched in August 2020.
Very cool. And what's the cadence of episodes that you release? And are you what's the cadence of the show? How often do you release episodes?
We have episodes come out every Friday, and in true like anime fashion, we keep them to like 20, 30 minutes because I don't know if you know this, Jason, but most anime episodes are about that time. So we wanted to honor that and kind of follow the same time frame.
So you're really being true to your true. So your audience is going to show up and they're like going to understand what you're doing in terms of the timing and the content and everything. So if you're an anime in other words, what I'm hearing from this is if you like anime, this is well worth. If you like anime or you like coaching, or you just love the sound of Christina and Mary's voices, you should definitely tune in. That's what I'm hearing from all this. What do you say to that?
Absolutely. And I think even, we've been having a lot of fun exploring not just anime, but also branching out into the world of video games. Because what we've found as we've engaged with some of our listeners is it's almost like, I find in general, people that have quote unquote nerdy hobbies, they like to stick them in the closet and not let anyone know they exist. But once you like find someone else that's in the secret club, suddenly it's like a nerd explosion. And so we've been talking about anime, we've been talking about animated movies, we've been talking about video games. We might even at some point talk about, Western cartoons, but it's just been this experience where as anime watchers, oftentimes what happens is you'll end up binging episode after episode because they're so short. And so we wanted to create a format where similarly, even if you missed out on us for a couple of weeks, you could take an afternoon and binge on Coachtaku.
I'm glad you said video games because we're talking about one thing that I know nothing about, anime, and then we're flipping it to something I know arguably as much as anybody, but I'm a huge gamer. I think Mary knows this about me. So video games, I want to hear a little bit more about that because I could talk to you about video games for the next hour and a half and I would never run out of things to talk about. So are you relating coaching to video game characters as well? Is that the concept behind it?
Yeah, either to video game characters or the story itself. I think, Jason, as you know, there are a whole bunch of coaching lessons that we can take out of video games. By what you choose to play, to how you play it, to what the story is itself. And there's such a world out there that we can use the material from. And it's also a lot of fun it's also a lot of fun for us because then it gives us an excuse to play video games as well as to watch anime.
Yeah, of course. As a coach, what do you hear when I tell you that I don't like losing in sports games and I've thrown the controller before? What do you hear? What do you hear about my relationship with competition?
Well, Jason, what I would say is I imagine based on your frustrations that there might be a tell that you choose strategies where you play to win. And therefore my guess is you draft characters that have obvious potential to them rather than taking big risks. And so you're big on playing inside your comfort zone to guarantee some wins.
I love that. And that is deadly accurate. And Christina, you are like the perfect setup person for the next thing I wanted to ask you both about. And we're actually going to talk about comfort zones. So the question I have for each of you, and answer in any way you see fit, is tell me something that's inside of your comfort zone that is going to be outside of somebody else's. And bonus points, if you can I feel like we're in the dating game. If you can give me something for each of you that's outside of the other person's, that would be really fun. So I'm making up a game on the spot here. And you don't have to, it's just bonus points. And the bonus points in my podcast are worth a lot, just to let you know. So whoever would like to go first, something that's inside of your comfort zone that is likely outside of somebody else's.
Oh, I think for me, I could say like traveling on my own is probably one of them, or eating alone. I have no problem like going into a restaurant, just like spending some time having a meal. But I know that a lot of people are so uncomfortable with that. And I know that for Christina, something that is outside of her comfort zone, but very much within mine, is networking. Like, I love to just go into a networking event and just meet new friends. But I know that that's not Christina's go-to.
Okay, points for you. I think bonus points for you, Mary. Christina, what do you got for us?
She called me out like that. Well, conversely, on the flip side, something that I find is inside of my comfort zone, despite being a really introverted person, is I love and adore public speaking. Like, I've actually been a part of a couple of different international gigs at this point. And I know that for a lot of people, the thought of standing on stage and delivering a talk is mortifying. Which is actually, I would go to say that I have a guess that that's outside of Mary's comfort zone, because I know she's amazing with like those one-on-one connections. But my guess is that she'd prefer the intimacy over like, preaching to 300 people at once.
Mary, back to you. What do you say to that?
I know that Christina knows this, but I actually have a theater background, so I'm super comfortable like speaking to people at one time.
Oh my gosh, Mary, you're so winning here. Not that it's competitive.
Sorry, I love you. I mean, it is true that I am more comfortable with the one-on-one connections, but I also do love performing. Like, if you give me a scene or a script, I can run with it.
Yeah. So Christina, something you said got me thinking. I know I've had a lot of speakers on the show. I know a lot of speakers from a different world I've been a part of. My experience of speakers is I would say more than 50% are actually really pretty introverted. And I think and Mary, I think you would actually know this better than I would. But this is my impression too, and I'm not trying to stereotype, but I think a lot of performers actually identify as introverts. For example, I had somebody on the show, Brant Menswar, was on the show back in November, and he's a former rock musician, and he's a public speaker, author. He's like pretty well-known guy. And when we were talking about these things, the two things that were outside of his comfort zone were being inside of lots of people, like being around lots of people, and also heights. So I said to him, so you're telling me your worst nightmare is doing a stage dive at a show? He's like, that's actually my worst nightmare, like diving off a stage into a crowd. And he's like, I'm actually pretty introverted, but there's something about being on the stage that he's like you, Christina, he loves the talking to large audiences. And then he likes to go and like be with his family or be by himself again, because he identifies as more introvert. So that's not surprising. I think that's actually more common than people would think, because I always thought like, oh, like people on stage, they love to be out in public and love people. And that's not been generally how it's landed for me.
Yeah. And I don't want to like generalize this for anyone else that identifies as introverted, but I know for me, part of it just boils down to, I have never felt comfortable with small talk. Like, it actually makes me very anxious to think about if we're going to talk about the weather or like pop stars that I don't know anything about. And so I think why I find comfort on stage is because I already know that the agreement is that we're going to talk about something meaningful. We're going to talk about something that I'm passionate about. And I take a lot of comfort in that.
Yeah, that's cool. Now let's take a look at the other side of that question, the reverse of that. Something that is outside each of your comfort zones that already hasn't been called out by the other one. And then, so like something that's outside of your comfort zone that might be inside of somebody else's, and something new, by the way, since we've kind of already been talking about this.
I can start. And I think something that's outside for me, Jason, I'm also like a hardcore introvert, but I think what's outside for me is just like the idea of trying new things in general just like scares me, because I'm a perfectionist. I like to get things right. So whenever it's something new or different, I have to be like super prepared, or like, knowing that I still have to do the thing, because I think as a coach and with the work that I do, I've noticed I've gained a lot of experience and a lot of positive affirmations from trying new things. So knowing that I'm going to do it anyway, but still having that fear factor before trying something different.
Yeah. Christina, what about you?
I think something that remains outside of my comfort zone, even though it's a part of what I've done for 4.5 years now, is I'm still really uncomfortable with prospecting for sales conversations. And I think it's somewhat related to this like introverted conversation, but specifically I do still get hot and sweaty when I think of needing to go out and meet new people to talk business with. And I like to be really honest about that because I work with a lot of other entrepreneurs. And I think there's an entrepreneurial myth that one day you'll wake up and like none of it will ever feel hard or none of it will ever feel scary ever again. And for me, like it does still feel scary. I think the difference is I've like worked myself out of not taking the fear as seriously as I did when I first started.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that's really, really common in the coaching industry. There's a lot of people that I'm a little bit of a unicorn in that I came from the sales world. And so the idea of going out and meeting a lot of people and sharing what I'm up to from a sales perspective is certainly not new to me. Doing it in a way that's much more, and we use the term enrollment in coaching, much more less convincing and persuading and much more having other people see something in it for themselves and coming to their own conclusions. That's been my thing. And I don't like being told no. Like I don't really know anybody who likes to be told no. And Christina, like you said, you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I work with a lot of startups, and the amount of no's you get before you get a yes in any small business is just tremendous. And I don't know anybody who's like, I love hearing no over and over again. What I'm hearing is it's a muscle that when you first start out and you come from a different field, or this is your, the thing that you do is it's just, you've been working on flexing that muscle and it's getting stronger where your recovery time, it's like your recovery time to go and do it again just gets shorter and shorter until I don't know that it's ever going to feel good. Like I said, I did it for 20 years and I never like to lose a deal. I never like to I never like to have a client who I want to work with say no to working with me, but kudos to you for just, it's the resilience of keeping on going with that outside of how you feel about it.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, it would just be like, if I could give anyone else that's looking to start a business or work in sales or whatever a gift, it would just be the reminder that like, even if it always feels scary, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you or you chose the wrong career. It's actually just like a natural part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. We've already been talking about this, and Christina outed her lack of knowledge about what is outside of Mery's comfort zone. So this is perfect because we're going to talk about speaking. There's a couple minutes on speaking. So Christina, you said you love speaking. Mery, do you like public speaking or do you like acting, or do you see them as kind of the same thing?
I think it's the same skill set. Honestly, I just think in one, you're embodying a different role, and then in the other, you're just speaking from yourself.
Gotcha. And so the question I have for both of you is, I have the power to give you 5 minutes and you get to deliver any speech to the entire world that you want to. What would each of you give your speeches on and why?
So if I had to give a speech, and especially taking like this last year into consideration, I think I'd love to remind people that work doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be something you don't like. It can actually be a lot of fun, and it can actually be aligned to your inner purpose. And so I would love to remind people to find the joy in the small things, to find the creativity, the things that make you flow and light up, and to remember that, life is short and to make the most of it.
Yeah. So just to expand upon that a little bit, why is that an important message for the world? Like what's possible, or what has you be passionate about that topic?
Well, I think in a lot of ways, this year has made a lot of us stop and really look at our lives and how we've been doing things. And a lot of us I think all of us in some way have experienced loss. And so it's really questioned, well, what am I doing here? What is my purpose in this life? What do I get to go? Where do I go from here? And I think what I've come up to by doing like a lot of work for myself is just like, there's so much purpose that we can give by giving to others, and it's fulfilling and it's great. But there's something for ourselves to look inside and say, how do I fulfill my own needs? How do I create joy for myself? how do I light up? Because it's when we're in that energy, when we're doing the things that we love, like talking about a crazy coaching anime, or writing, or doing the things that we public speaking, whatever we have light and fun with, that actually creates tribe, and it almost like attracts people to us. So it's like, find that inner light and joy.
Very cool. Thanks, Mery. Christina, how about you?
I have spent this whole time trying to come up with something nearly as profound as Mery did.
See, competition again. I love this. I love getting you both here stealthily or not stealthily competing with each other. This is great.
We're also anime rivals, so this makes sense.
Yeah,
this is so good. I love this.
Mery's my ultimate rival. No, my first thought was actually about, if I could address the entire world right now, I think the topic that would matter the most to me is, how do we focus on being present and curious with each other?
And
to kind of go back to the idea of why that matters. So, in coaching, at least we all went through the same coach training program, by the way, accomplishment coaching. And on day one, they're like, hey, we're going to train you in 292 different coaching tools, but the most important ones you already have. And they're your listening and your speaking. And what I notice is, similar to what Mery was saying about a lot of us taking this past year to pause, I think what's so important about looking at how willing we are to be present with each other is, I think it just creates a depth of connection with people. Because so often I'm in conversations where instead people are trying to think of like what it is they're going to say next, or, how it is they're going to retaliate, or what it is they need to be defensive about. And I think if we were just being curious with one another, there's like so much more room to be really expressive and honest and authentic with each other. And something that I think is cool is like, we're even kind of seeing that take place on various online platforms. Like, I was reading an article recently that was talking about how, with in-person networking not really being an option right now due to COVID, how LinkedIn has become a much more authentic platform than it used to be. And that content that just boasts, results or professional achievement doesn't do as well as content where people are sharing who they are and what they're really up to and why it matters to them.
Yeah, that's super cool. I love that. That's been my experience with LinkedIn too. And I did a lot of in-person networking. I do a lot of virtual networking now. And it's interesting that you bring that up about LinkedIn, because I recently went through a 5-week, it's called LinkedIn Lab. It's a really cool, it's like an accelerator on how to use LinkedIn. And the thing that attracted me to it, Christina, which had you remind me of this, is the person who does this, it's all about the human to human connection and being authentic on LinkedIn, not using lead generation system or some sort of, hey, like go and search for everybody with this title in their name and then go spam them with a message. And I agree. Like LinkedIn, I used to find really annoying, and I've actually found it less annoying recently. And I never put it together as to why that is, but I can see that because people are, it's like this year, and this is just my opinion, this year has really highlighted that we're way more than our corporate careers. And for those of us who are parents like myself, we got kids that are on Zoom calls for school, and for people that are married, like, oh, there's your husband walking on your meeting behind you because we live in an apartment, or for people that are home with pets. And like, hey, like these are actually like human beings that I'm interacting with who care a lot more than just what their LinkedIn profile looks like and what they do for a living. So I think that's definitely been, I'm glad you brought that up, Christina, because that's been a real benefit to people in the professional people of like relate. It's easier to me now. It's easier to relate to people as just people and not a coach or a CEO or a accountant or whatever that may be.
Yeah. And I think it really matters because, at least, and this is my personal opinion, but of course there are always going to be people who are so successful that their title is all they need to build a business. But I think for many of us, if we actually look at how we consume and who we purchase from or do business with, we look for that chemistry and we look for that personal connection. And this past year, to your point, Jason, is just like, it's really eliminated a lot of the facade or the performance around being a good professional. And I find myself more endeared to people as a result. Like, I don't mind that your hair is out of place or that you're wearing pajamas. It's like cool to know that you can make six figures in a year and still be a hot mess at the same time.
I love that. I feel like you should trademark that. Like, you can make six figures and still be a hot mess. I love that. That's awesome. You heard it here first. That's great. I'm trying to think of any other questions for either of you. Those are both great speeches. I have bad news. I don't have the power to have you deliver a speech to the world. But what I do have the power, which I just gave, is for you to both share what you would speak about to the world, to everybody who's going to be listening to this. So thank you for your thoughtful answers and what makes that important for you. With that, we're going to take a really brief commercial break, and we will be right back.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Christina and Mery, you still with us? Want to make sure you're still here. I'm here. Are you still here?
Present.
Okay, good. I want to make sure you weren't like, this is not fun. I'm out of here. I'm going to go and watch some anime or something.
Well, we've talked about authenticity, so if I felt compelled to leave, I feel like it's my right to do so.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be great. Like, hey, are you both back? And Mary's like, I'm here. Christina. Oh, you're off watching anime or playing video games, which I could totally understand. But thank you for still being here. I appreciate it. All right, so this is the part of the show where I'd love if each of you would take a little bit of time and share your journey around anything you'd like to. So be professional. This can be what got you geeked up about anime, about video games. Like, this is your open forum to share whatever you'd like to. And then what's up for you at the end of 2020? And more importantly, what do you see for yourself in 2021? So just by the way, audience, we're recording this on Friday, December 18th, 2020. So this is a very timely question. We are, 13 days away from 2021. So Mery or Christina, whichever one of you would like to go first, love to just hear a little bit more about you and what you're up to and your journey to what got you here.
So since we're both here together, I think it's only fair that we talk about our anime origin story and where this love of anime came from. And I can start and then Christina can jump in whenever, because we're really familiar with each other's stories. But I think my love for anime started with Sailor Moon, because as a young child, again, introvert, right? And here was this character who was, really extroverted and created community and tribe with all these other powerful women. And I think what I loved about Sailor Moon herself was that she wasn't perfect. She was a crybaby and she doesn't score well on tests, but even so, she had all this magical superpower and was able to create all these amazing relationships. And I was like, I want more of that. And I think that was my anime love story. And from there on, it was just like, okay, what else can I watch and what else is similar?
Very cool.
Ooh. Yeah. Related to that, Mery and I actually have an episode on Coachtaku where we talk about our anime origin stories a little bit. And I think what's really nifty is, I think in some ways, consciously or unconsciously, my love of anime fueled my love for women's empowerment. And what I mean by that is, growing up as a kid, there was something about these anime characters in which they had female characters that were in really empowered roles where they got to save the world and kick butt and take names, but they were still feminine and beautiful and cared about love as well. And that level of well-roundedness and fully fleshed out was just not something that I ever experienced in Western cartoons. And so I think in a lot of ways, my own trajectory to go on to really care about lifting women up and have them feel fully expressed came from the love that I had for these characters. And related to that, as I look at 2020, on one hand, I absolutely acknowledge that it has been a difficult and trying year for so many of us. Speaking as a business owner, at the end of the day, I do relate to coaching as somewhat of a luxury service. And for a while, I was like, oh boy, what does this pandemic mean for me? And I feel really blessed and fortunate that not only was I able to maintain my business, but that, I took on creative projects like launching Coachtaku, which was really about expressing more of myself in the world. And so I think what's next in 2020, to answer that last part of your question, Jason, is I just want to take it to the next level. As I've mentioned, I've been doing some international speaking. My latest gig was I got to speak to 700 people at the SAP Global Coaching Summit that was based in Munich earlier this year. And overall, I just want to continue to see my community grow and be filled with women leaders that, are kicking butt and taking names, but really connected to who they want to be about it rather than mimicking someone else's style of leadership.
Very cool. Very cool. Christina, what is your idea? And that's Mary, this is a question for you as well. So you both do coaching work. What does your ideal client look like from, Christina, I'll start with you since you just brought this up. It sounds for you, it's all about the psychographics, not so much the demographics. So what is give me your ideal client avatar. So if anybody's listening and they're interested working with Christina or Mary, they have a good handle on what kind of work you do with those people and what kind of people you're looking to talk to.
Ooh, this is such a fun question. So I would say you're my ideal client if you are a millennial, which, yes, I know is somewhat vague, but I'm going to be vague on purpose. So if you are a millennial, if you're a woman or woman identifying, and if you're in a leadership position, and leadership could mean anything, right? It could mean leadership within a company. It could mean starting your own business. It could mean running a nonprofit. But regardless of what it looks like per se, you have some understanding that you work really hard and you really care about your cause. And perhaps where you're struggling is in getting the team that works around you to be as passionate for your cause. And as a result, you're martyring yourself for it. You're burnt out. You're forgetting why you love what you do. You feel victimized by working as hard as you do. And I like to work with you to improve your leadership skills so that people are on the same page as you, so that you're not just being successful on paper, but you're actually having the experience of success in your life. And I don't just mean being better at what you do or making more money, but I actually mean being able to take the time to really enjoy what you're up to and feel rested and feel sourced. Like one example I gave someone once is I feel like my ideal client, if you visited their home or apartment, their living room is perfectly clean. Like they're ready to create the best experience for any guest that they have. But then if you snuck into their bedroom, it's a total disaster because it's reflective of how they're putting other people before themselves and they're thinking of themselves last.
That's perfect. I'm sure you've thought of this, but you can say, before we decide to work together, could you give me a quick purview of your living room? And then could you give me a quick purview of your bedroom? Not from a creepy way, but I just don't worry about why I'm asking. Or at the very least, before we get on this discovery session, could you just send me a quick snapshot of your living space and then your bedroom? Don't worry, it'll never go anywhere else. There you go. That can be your gate. That can be your intake form. Is what does your apartment look like? That's funny. It'd be like, you're weird. No. That's awesome. Mary, what about you? What's your ideal client look like? Be like?
Yeah, it's slightly different. I love working with people who are who feel really stuck in their careers. They're like, maybe they're a closeted creative where they're thinking of this, venturing out on their own, writing a book, starting their own business, really tapping into their creativity, but they feel like I can't do that because of whatever reason. I love working with those people who want to tap more into their creativity, their passions, their joy, but aren't really giving themselves permission to do so for whatever reason and want to live a more fulfilled life. So I'm looking for those people who don't think it's possible to be happy and to have it all.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. We're going to move to the next section. And I'm not going to lie. I'm a little scared because this is what I call the AJA part of the section. This is the Ask Jason Anything. And I have no idea what either of you is going to ask me. My commitment to you is I will very, very likely answer it. And I like to put myself on a timer because otherwise I will take the rest of the time because I'm reliable to do so. So I'm going to open myself up to two amazing people who can probably have some curiosity about me, and see which one of you would like to ask me a question first that I can answer for you and answer for the audience.
Well, I have probably the most important question that anyone could ask right now.
Yes.
Because you hinted at it earlier. So, what video games are you currently playing, and
Yes.
which ones are you enjoying the most?
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you came at me with the hard hitting stuff first. So I think Mery might know this, but I have a PlayStation 5, and I procured it from a certain auction site for more than it retails for. And I don't say that to brag. I say that to tell you the commitment that I have to this part of my life. So what I have played recently, so I played the only exclusive for PlayStation 5, and it just happens to be my favorite game series of all time. And I played Demon Souls and beat it. And I don't know if either of you ever played Dark Souls or Bloodborne on PlayStation 4. It's my all-time favorite series. And then also Sekiro, it's the latest one from Software. My all-time favorite series. Demon Souls is the only PlayStation 5 exclusive that only plays on that platform. It's completely remade from a 2009. Demon Souls was a 2009 game for PlayStation 3. I beat that. And so currently, and this is very timely, I wanted to play Cyberpunk. And I don't know if either of you have been paying attention to the news about Cyberpunk, but it's not good.
Nope.
Have either of you seen? Do you know?
Just seen, I've experienced.
Oh, you've experienced. Yeah. So on the PlayStation 5, it runs fine, actually. But I don't know if you saw this, that Sony has removed it from the store because it's so buggy. It's just that bad on the original PlayStation 4 and the original Xbox One. So because of that, I'm going to wait until it gets patched, because that's kind of my favorite genre, role playing. I love like dystopian sci-fi futuristic stuff. So it's really like one of my favorite genres. So what I'm playing instead is I'm playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla for PlayStation 5, which I also, and I love it because I love the Vikings era, and it's Valhalla is like the place where Vikings would go. It's like their Nirvana when they would be killed in battle or do it with honor. And it takes place in England, and it's a stunning game. Like I don't know if either of you are playing this, but it's an awesome game. So I am heavy into Assassin's Creed Valhalla right now. I will get into Cyberpunk here soon, and then I'm sharing this with Mery, and I think you're both playing this. I still am playing Hades a little bit on my Switch. I haven't played it much recently, but I beat it a few times. So that game, you don't just beat it once, you go and you beat it, and then you keep going through it because it's
the roguelite, baby.
It's a roguelite, baby. So yeah, I'm playing that. And then I'm going to relate this back to probably my favorite game of 2020 that I played this summer. It would probably be Demon Souls is definitely up there, but it definitely has to be Last of Us 2. The original Last of Us is probably my all-time favorite video game, if not top 1, top 3. And Last of Us 2 is just a stunning achievement. Like just the care and the graphics and the writing, the story. To me, the story is better than anything you see in the movies, and the characters and the voice acting and the violence and the fighting is like really gory, but also super realistic. And I love that game. And I loaded it in my PS5, and I'll definitely play it again at some point, but I will probably hold off for a little while on that while I'm still playing Assassin's Creed, because that game is massive. So that is my long-winded answer to what I'm playing right now.
Jason, I just want to take the time to thank you for your vulnerability, and particularly in revealing that Dark Souls is one of your favorite series, because what that tells me is that you're willing to suffer before you succeed.
Oh my God, Christina, I am willing to die over and over and over and over again. So for those who are listening who know Dark Souls, it's actually perfect for me because I love challenging myself, and the game is specifically designed to destroy you many times before you finally figure out how to get over the hump. And then it is just so rewarding. So I think there's a real parallel between coaching and Dark Souls, the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, Sekiro, from Software. And you can take that to your podcast. Maybe I'll come on and talk about it. But yes, thank you for my vulnerability. Yes.
You're going to be our guest for our Bloodborne Dark Souls episode.
Yeah. Sure. I've got a friend who's also a massive From Software fan too. So maybe him and I'll come on. We can talk about it. He actually works in the gaming industry. So Very cool. Thank you for the question, Christina. That is the hard-hitting news that the audience wants to hear, and I'm glad to share my vulnerability and my geekdom around video games, and also that I am willing to die for the cause. I've died a lot in Assassin's Creed too, actually. All right, Mary, what do you have for me?
Well, first, I just want to say there's an inner geek and nerd in all of us. If you get nothing else from today's podcast, I think this is a lesson. This is a takeaway. And then, Jason, I'm so curious for you. Like, now I'm giving you like a more coachy question, but like, what did you see for yourself in 2020, and what you see for yourself in 2021? What's next?
Yeah. Well, what I saw in 2020 was sitting down with my wife in January and creating a vision for what we were going to do this year. And then a month and a half later, moving, and at the same time getting pregnant. And like Christina said, my coaching business was not nearly as far along as yours, Christina. So I ran into the, oh boy, what's this going to look like? Had some ups and downs of that. I'm definitely back on the up again. So I would say what I saw in 2020, or what I had in 2020, was a complete, I live in a different place. We have another human in the house. I've released, I'm going to release 52 episodes of this podcast in 2020. My last episode goes out next week for the end of season 1. And kind of a complete shift. And my wife has a really busy job, like most people in New York City do. And we went from having a full-time nanny, a daughter in school in Brooklyn, my wife on the road 2 to 3 days a week, or in the office every day, to, in the space of 1 week, all of us under one roof, every minute of every day. Not that I was counting, every minute of every day with a 4-year-old on Zoom school in July. So that for me was the thing that I think without some of the training and support and ways of looking at things a little bit differently, that it would have driven me insane. And so that was the 2020. It was a combination of like pure joy, having a baby, moving has been pretty cool to where we are now, to also like, whoa, this is just not what we had expected in terms of our lifestyle. And yes, I know, like, I'm grateful. It's not about that our life is better or worse than anybody else, but it's just different. It's so different from, if I look at January and I look at what we're doing now, it's just so opposite. And then my wife is off on maternity leave too, which is very different to have her not working, because she's usually she's like the perfect client for Christina. It's like somebody who works and has a cause for her mission and everything. So that's my 2020. My 2021, we're not going to have another baby. I'm going to say that here live on the air. I'm done. I would say what I'd see for myself is to expand this podcast. And this is a good start, having you two on. I mentioned this at the beginning. I never had 2 guests on at once. So like getting creative, expressing myself, coming up with new formats or new ideas, being open to possibilities there. Definitely growing my coaching practice. And I'm starting to branch out in my business into some other really cool things that I'll be sharing in January on my website and on my LinkedIn that really fill me up and are, quite honestly, like really aligned with who I want to be in the world, that are new offerings I'm going to be coming out with. And I'm super excited about those. I'm not going to share them quite yet because I'm not quite ready to announce it. But I think next year is going to be kind of the next level for me in terms of how I want to show up for my clients and how do I want to show up for myself. So this year was all about like taking care of the family. Let's adapt. Let's not survive, but let's adapt. And I think next year, to me, 2021 is going to be all about how do I thrive, both for myself, how do I thrive for my clients, obviously, how do I thrive for my family? I hope that's obvious. And how to make it the best year yet. And so that's what I see for myself in 2021. I don't know how. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I am somebody who enjoys not having to know exactly how to do it. I enjoy the ride. So that's what I have for you, Mary. Thank you for the question. Did you, as a coach, do you have any follow-ups for me or anything that you're curious about?
No, it's not a follow-up question. I just think that, one, it's amazing, and I hope that you're celebrating all the lessons from it and everything that you've created and gone, moving forward, the energy. But I also feel like a lot of us have had to like recreate and reinvent ourselves this year, which is it's a really cool thing. And one of the things that I haven't talked about, but I've done a lot of more spiritual intuitive work this year. And the card that I would have selected for myself, like the tarot card, if I had to pick one, would be like the Tower, which is like when everything is burning down. And usually it has like a negative connotation to it. But I find that when things burn down, you have an opportunity like to build them with a stronger foundation and in a different way.
That's cool. Yeah, I love that. Very good. All right. I feel like you both let me off the hook a little bit. And I appreciate that. And also, I love the questions, by the way, but I was a little scared over here, but thank you for being gentle on me. All right. I'm going to take the hosting mic back and bring it back to you two lovely people. So, Christina, for you, what are you most passionate about?
Well, I feel like if I said coaching or anime, it would be obvious. But actually, if I could give like the highest level what I'm the most passionate about, it's something in the realm of like feeding my own curiosities, which I distinguished this past year as actually a core value of mine, feeding curiosity. And what I mean by that is just like, if you get to know me as a person, I have more hobbies and interests than most people know what to do with. Like, I went to college and I got degrees in chemistry and English. I'm a coach, but I'm also a beer brewer. Like, I just love living life fully. Yeah. And so I think my biggest passion is that I don't half-ass anything. Like, I don't take something on just to sort of cover it at the surface level. But if I take it on, it's to really get the most out of it and to really just like find the joy in every crevice of it.
That's cool. I was actually recording a podcast earlier today, and my guest brought up the quote from Shawshank Redemption. It's like, get busy living or get busy dying. And I think that, like, when you said that about how you look at it, like you're always getting busy living. And for you, living is like exploring what's the next thing. What can I get curious about? I do have a question for you about that, Christina, because there's the thing called the SOS, the shiny object syndrome, which I can be very guilty of. And I think a lot of people that I know that work in the development space and like a space where there's always something to learn and grow. What is your filter, or how do you actually decide if you want to invest the time, the money, the energy in something like beer brewing or starting a podcast? Like, what is your process to actually get to the point of like, I've already got a lot of things, but that's the next thing for me? Because it sounds like when you commit to it, you go deep with it, and that is likely not a small commitment of resources or of time.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I relate to it to how I decided to finally get my first tattoo, because I would assert that a tattoo, because it's permanent, is actually a similar commitment for me, which was really, I remember being 22 years old and having this idea and getting to the point where I could actually visualize where it would be on my body. And so while my hobbies or my pursuits or my businesses or those things, like, I'm not getting them tattooed on my body per se, what I would say is similarly, when I'm presented with a new idea or when I come across something that excites me, I like to sit with it. I journal about it. I'm, a very spiritual person. I might connect to some of my spirit guides on it. I toy with it. I dabble with it. Like, I really let it sit with me and take a look at, is this fun because it's just fun? Or is this fun because I can see a future for myself in it? And as I sit with it, I trust my intuition to really look at how it aligns ultimately with like the bigger picture that I have for my life. Because I totally get shiny object syndrome. And I think sometimes the way that we become culprits of it is that we silo ourselves. Like, we don't think of how our career bleeds into our personal life, bleeds into our relationships, bleeds into where we have fun. And that's when we get overwhelmed and take on too much. Versus when you're really thinking about, hey, like, beer brewing isn't just a cool hobby, but it actually reconnects me to my scientific roots. And it actually helps me create community because there's so many people that have a passion for that. And it also allows me to express myself creatively. Like, that suddenly ties in all of the pieces of my life rather than distracts from parts of them.
I love that, Christina. Yeah, I'm hearing, this is something that that I've been very guilty of, and it's something I'm still working on, is breaking up the idea that compartmentalizing. And one of the things that we talk about in coaching is how do you actually integrate? So it sounds like you've really gone through the process and have a practice of, to my question, as you look at something like, how can I actually integrate this into not into everything you do, but like, how is this more than just this? Like, how does this create more than the sum of its parts is kind of how I look at it, which is a super cool. You're inspiring me to think about the things that I'm up to and how I can integrate those into other parts. And as you know, I know you're married, I'm married. So like what you do at work almost always relates in somehow to your relationships, whether you're married or not. I guess it's just like romantic relationships. So thank you. That's really inspirational. I'm going to think about that for myself too, because I haven't thought about it in that frame before.
Cool. And Jason, by when will you practice this integration method?
Oh, accountability.
Here it comes. Well, I will discuss this topic within the next 48 hours, and I'll leave it at that. No, I will. I am going to think about it. I'm actually going to take. We're moving it. So for those, we're moving into our coaching weekend this month, and Christina and Mery are not on a team together, so we're not going to see each other over the weekend. But one of the things that I'll be doing after that is taking a couple weeks off, get some space, and like think about this. And this, in all total transparency, Christina, this is something that will be like for my visioning for 2021 is how do I have more integration between all these things and all the things that I'm up to too. Because I'm somebody who I probably don't have as many hobbies as you, but I do have quite a few things that I like to do. And I'm probably a little less committed to you though. I have some things I'm like, oh, that's fun. And then I'll do it. And then I'm like, it's still there, but I'm not deep on it. So by when I will have, you can check in with me by January 4th, Monday, January 4th, 2021. How about that?
Perfect.
Cool. Do you need a time or is it just the date enough?
You know, I hold you as perfect and whole and capable. So I look forward to your follow-up on January 4th.
Perfect. I just want to make sure that I'm really knocking out competency 10 for you here. I want to make sure that you're really nailing that one because that's important. You can see what's on my mind as we go into weekend 11. It's funny. All right. So Mery, how about you? What are you most passionate about?
So yeah, well, while you were talking, I was really thinking about this, and I think it boils down to, for me, it's the human experience, just people in general. Like, I'm really passionate about people, and I think that's why I love to travel. That's why I love to coach. And I think the more that I travel, the more I go to different places, and I'm exposed to like, people's resourcefulness, how similar and how different we are, and especially through coaching, right? It's like we're so very connected. Like I've worked with people from around the world in coaching. I've had that privilege. And it's amazing to me that the conversations are always similar. And it's like the same desires, fears, goals are kind of intrinsic in all of us. And that makes me really excited and curious and I want to know more. And I'm like, we're so connected and we're so similar. And there's a beauty and there's a lot of love in that. And it makes me want to explore it more and want to know more all the time.
Yeah, you're reminding me of the opening scene of Love Actually. I don't remember the exact lines, but isn't this what they talk about? Where I think it's Hugh Grant, and he's like, there's love everywhere, and it's the scene from Heathrow. Am I mixing this up with another movie, or is this? Am I either?
That sounds really familiar. Yeah, Christina.
It is indeed Love Actually.
Yeah, and it's the beginning, right? And isn't it Hugh Grant's voice where he has this like kind of like monologue about love is everywhere, and if you look around, it's everywhere, and we're all similar. So, Mery, you are doing a good job as Hugh Grant on the podcast today, with a much more feminine and delightful voice to listen to. Although Hugh Grant is very delightful to listen to, don't get me wrong. But see how I did that? That's improving. I related you to Hugh Grant and Love Actually. That's quite the connection.
Thank you so much. I will never forget
the wit, the creativity, the grandeur.
The grandeur. That's so good. All right. Next question. And Mery, I'm going to throw it back to you again. Talk about the thing that you are most proud of. So what is it for you that you are most proud of, Mery?
You know, Jason, this is a really tough one for me. I think there are a lot of things I'm proud of, but I think I'm actually the proudest. Having said that, I'm an introvert and terrified of trying new things. I think what I'm most proud of is my ability to venture out anyway. and to try it and see where it goes. So if I'd stayed with the intrinsic fears that I have, I don't think I would have gone anywhere or done anything, but I act in spite of the fear. So I'm really proud of myself for venturing because it's what's allowed me to travel on my own. It's what's allowed me to start my own coaching business. It's what, enables me to like create and, we'll put it out there and it'll be good or be bad or it doesn't matter. So I think that's the thing I'm most proud of myself.
Yeah. Do you have an example of something that maybe in the last few years that was scary to you that you went ahead and did anyway?
Well, definitely starting my own coaching business was terrifying, but
yeah,
as I think any business owner will attest. But I also can give you a more concrete example. I've traveled by myself. I think the first time I traveled on my own when I was maybe like 22, and I traveled to a different country. I traveled to Panama for the first time. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that idea of just going. And I had a great time. I mean, I explored, I tried different things, I made new friends, and it just enabled me to realize that there are so many things I can do if I just give myself the opportunity to do so. And if I give myself the space. So I always remember that. Yeah, when I tried different things.
Awesome, Mery. Christina, how about you? What's the thing that you're most proud of?
The thing that I am, without a doubt, it will always be at the top of my list, most proud of is actually my marriage with my husband, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because, earlier I was talking about how I love working with clients who, are passionate about their cause, but they also do that hefty job of like burning themselves out. And I think the reason I love serving that woman is because I was that woman. Like I remember when I first entered my coach training program, I shared my resume and my accomplishments and all I had done in my life. And I got asked the question like, hey, Christina, when is it going to be enough for you? And the reason why then in juxtaposition, I'm so proud of my marriage is it was probably the first thing I've created in my life that has been created from a place outside of like needing to get it right or needing to prove how smart I am or needing to be perfect. Like it has just been a relationship built on adventure and whimsy and fun and celebration. And it's the easiest part of my life. And I think as a coach and as a leader and as an entrepreneur who's like always diving off the deep end into things that make me uncomfortable, it just makes me really grateful to know that I have this stable place in my life that's super easy and I never have to question it or feel scared about it or any of those things.
That's amazing, Christina. Yeah, I think you're married in the last few years, right?
Yeah, we got married in May of 2019. So I guess you could argue that we're still newlywed-ish.
Well, in relation to some other people on this podcast, you're definitely married less time. We just celebrated 11. Yeah, we got married in 2009, so we celebrated 11 years in May. So it'll be 12 years in 2021. Thank you. I wanted to ask you if you had any advice for the audience. So for those, and besides like marry the right person, I think that's kind of like 1A in a relationship is marry the person that fills you up. What's the thing that you would coach somebody on or give them advice? You're talking to a friend where they're not feeling the whimsy or the magic or the fun or the passion in their marriage. Like, how would you, and my guess is you've probably coached people around this. Like, what is the thing that you would offer to people to take a look at or how they could represent themselves to that?
Ooh, in some ways, I want to go back to what I was saying around shiny object syndrome, because I think so many of us are guilty of thinking of romantic relationship as its own thing. And we forget to think about how do I want a romantic relationship to fit into the whole of my life? Like what kind of partner would support my career? What kind of partner would support my love for adventure? What kind of partner would challenge me to be more creative or be more extroverted on purpose sometimes? And so I think for anyone who's out there still trying to find the right person or the person that lights them up, first of all, my reminder is, don't rely on the movies. I didn't have fireworks with my husband when I met him. I had more of that, like it just felt constant, like more like the low burning fire than the hot, fiery passion. But the reason I knew he was the one was because I could just see how he would be a champion for the life that I wanted for myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Christina. Well, congratulations to you and Paul. That's really, really inspiring. And I wish you the best in your marriage in the future as well. And all the life's adventures ahead of you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Vulnerability question for both of you. Christina, what's something you're afraid might actually be true about you?
I think the biggest thing that I get scared is true about me is that I'm a bitch.
I love how that was so flat and just like drop it. That's so good.
Well, I run an anime podcast. Clearly, I'm not afraid to put myself out there. But yeah, as someone, like, my whole life, I've just always been scared of that interpretation. And I think it just comes from knowing that I'm internally very awkward or shy, but also knowing that I'm very intelligent. And in the past, some of the feedback I've gotten as a result of that is that I can come across as intimidating because people don't know the shit show that's swirling on the inside that's just trying to get it right with them.
Yeah.
And so, part of why people hire me is because I'm bold and I'm willing to say the thing. And sometimes I get scared of like, oh, I'm the person that has to say the thing again. I'm the canary in the coal mine. I'm so mean. So I think that's like the interpretation of myself that I would be most scared to find out is real or true, or that other people believe about me.
All right. That's a good one. So my guess is, if anybody ever calls you that, or you hear that they call you that, that's probably quite the trigger for you.
Oh yeah, like total shutdown mode.
Yeah, you're like, nope.
Weepy, cry into a pint of ice cream.
Right.
Never speak again.
Exactly. You become, the gif of Emma Stone eating the ice cream and crying. I don't know exactly what it's from, but that's I'm picturing you. You're like, Paul, somebody called me a bitch today. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
They're right. They saw the real me, and it's the bitchy me.
All the things. All right. Mary, what about you? What's something you're afraid might actually be true about you?
That I'm selfish and uncaring. And I'll tell you why that comes up for me. And it's also it's also connected to the introverted part of myself, because most people that know me would probably not identify me as such. But because I'm an introvert, I can be with people for only a certain amount of time. And then I'm like, okay, I tapped out. I don't want to speak to you anymore. I need my time out. And that can come off as off-puttish at times. Like if I'm not really clear about that, it can come off like I'm just not talking to you anymore. And so people might think that I just dropped you or don't care about you. And so in that sense, it can come off as unselfish and uncaring. And I think there's also a part of me that, it's like, well, am I being? Is this? And it's actually taking working with a coach and really looking at my own needs and what I need to be sourced to kind of get past that story and say, no, it's just about taking care of myself. It's about being vocal and letting other people in and saying, hey, this is what's going on. And then like setting those healthy boundaries around.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I can imagine for you, Mary, that can be a challenge. So first of all, you are correct. Mary and I have known each other for almost a year, and that is not my experience of you at all. But I can imagine that can be a challenge for people when in more of a new friendship or romantic relationship where it's actually not about the other person. It's just about what you need, but it's hard to express that and not take that personally from the other side of it. Have you ever received that feedback before?
I actually have, and it's taken me aback. I'm like, what do you mean? And then it's again, like I think at this point in my life, I'm totally in a different place when it comes to relationships, and I have more tools and more awareness to have the conversation go differently. But like in my early 20s, and I'm divorced, so even when I was married, and conversations like that came up, I was like, what do you mean? And then I would go into the spiral of like sadness and tears and being wrong, and I'm like, what am I? But it's really about identifying, okay, well, what is it that I need in order to be with people? What is it that I need to be for myself? And what does that look like? And it varies, right? We all have like different levels of needs.
Yeah. Thank you both for sharing your vulnerability And for those listening, when you connect with Christina and Mery, which I highly recommend you connect with both of them, please don't use this information against them. Or if you do, they're going to know that they listen to the podcast, and maybe they'll be able to take it. The fact that you shared it probably means that you're okay with it. All right, we're going to start to wrap up. Yeah, we're going to start to wrap up today. Before we do that, I wanted to come back for each of you, give you each a chance to see if there's anything that's come up from the conversation that I shared with you, that you shared with me, anything that's had that, that spark of brilliance in your mind that you wanted to share with the audience at this point. So Christina, I'm going to go back to you. Is there anything at this point that you want to, anything you want to say to the audience, or anything that's come up for you during the conversation today?
So I think the two things that I've been chewing on, one being slightly more coachy, would be, again, I think to bottom line it, it's December 18th. We've only got a couple days left of 2020. And so it's really front of mind for me is like, how many of you out there are really clear on what your core values are? And then if you're clear, how many of you are actually creating your vision of 2021 from those values? So that's like a big inquiry I have that I'd love you all to consider if you're listening. And then the other piece that's more anime related is if you've been listening to this and you're really jiving with the video game and anime conversation, please know that we take recommendations. And so if you actually want Jason on Coachtaku to talk about Bloodborne and Dark Souls, you can let us know by messaging us on Instagram, which is CoachtakuPod, or you can email us at coachtakupod@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, please, for all listening, if you are not tired of hearing my voice yet, which I know I have some people that have listened to every episode because they told me, please do it because I really want to be in their podcast, but I think it has to be popular demand. Otherwise, your VIP line to get into your podcast is high, and I want to move to the front of the line. And I feel like without crowdsourcing it, it's going to be really challenging for me. So please, I want to be in their podcast, and I haven't been invited yet. So please do this for me. I'm begging you all to do it, please. All right, Mery, anything that you want to come back to?
Yeah, I think what I want to leave you with is that for myself, like I've done, and I think I mentioned this, but a lot of the intuitive trust work. And I'm really excited because for the new year, I see like combining the intuitive part with coaching in a different way. Like, what does it look like to actually trust our bodies, trust our gut in the decisions we're making? And it really goes back to something that Christina also brought up. So I'm excited to start trying some of these tools in a different way with people. And yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And on the coaching side, like we, on the Coachtaku pod side, we've been getting so much positive feedback. It's pretty incredible. Like both Christina and I are super grateful for it because this is something that we both love, obviously. And we see, like for me, as I think about the podcast in the upcoming year, I see all these possibilities for partnering with people in a different way. And we've gotten invitations to like go into schools and, like bring this to a younger generation. Like, what does it look like to talk to a younger generation about coaching and anime and bringing that conversation together? So I'm super excited about the ways that this could go and grow, and looking forward to just working with Christina because, as you've heard, she's pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. Awesome, Mery. Thank you so much. So we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to ask you for some words of wisdom, but I actually thought it would be appropriate to leave you all with some words of wisdom. Are you ready? And then after I give you the words of wisdom, which are not my own, then you will get a chance to leave some words of wisdom. So are you ready for this?
Hit us.
Whenever I get gloomy with the state of the world, I think about the arrivals gate at Heathrow Airport. General opinions starting to make out that we live in a world of hatred and greed, but I don't see that. It seems to me that love is everywhere. Often it's not particularly dignified or newsworthy, but it's always there. Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, husbands and wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, old friends. When the planes hit the Twin Towers, as far as I know, none of the phone calls from the people on board were messages of hate or revenge. They were all messages of love. If you look for it, I've got a sneaky feeling that you'll find that love actually is all around. Hugh Grant playing the Prime Minister. Hugh Grant playing the Prime Minister in Love Actually. There you go. Mery, what do you have for us in terms of words to wisdom? And keep it much shorter than what I gave you. So this would be something like Audience could throw in a Post-it note, throw in an Instagram post. What do you got for us, Mery?
I'm going to leave you with the words of Lao Tzu. When you let go of what you are, you become what you might be.
I love it. Thanks, Mery. Christina, how about you?
Yeah, and I'm looking to quote the great 21st century philosopher, Christina Stathopoulos. You can make six figures and still be a hot mess.
Hell yes to both of these. Mery, what do you know around what time period your quote came from?
Jason, I would have to look this up. Lao Tzu is like a Chinese Confucius philosopher.
Yeah,
So,
right. I knew it's like from like a long time ago.
it's been around for a while, but I
So
think the words are still relevant today.
No, and I'm reason the reason is I just love how you came with something ancient. And Christina, I think you just came with something. Did you just create that on the pod? You just created that on the podcast, didn't you?
It is the freshest wisdom that you'll ever
I
have
love it
on this
This
podcast.
is so perfect. This is why I need to do more of these, to people, because like that is so perfect. And I think it's actually, I want to say thank you to both of you. And I think it's actually like a sign of, even without knowing or communicating this, the sign of your two partnership, how you're so, and I mean this seriously, and it's also a little bit witty, like the yin and the yang, and like how you two are just such good partners on the podcast, such good friends out in the real world. And I just want to thank you both, wish you the very best of the rest of this year. So happy holidays, whatever you celebrate, wish you a very happy new year. And I look forward to seeing all the success that you have. So thank you very much, Christina and Mery, for being on today. And for people listening, I will make sure and put a link to the podcast, a link to your Instagrams, a link to your websites. That will all be in the show notes. So you want to connect with both of these amazing women, connect with them through the link in the show notes on Apple, Spotify, and all the other places that you like to listen to podcasts. So again, thank you so much for being on today.
And thank you so much for having us, Jason. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.